Good evening, folks. Freddie Vasquez. This is Basement Politics Unfiltered tonight. I have Anthony DiMaggio joining me. Let's go over that Mike Spano incident when he was 12 or 13. Good evening, folks. Freddie Vasquez. This is Basement Politics former police lieutenant, Yonkers police lieutenant Anthony DiMaggio. He's going to dissect the Spano video. And give us the perspective from a 15-year veteran, a lieutenant, and talk some politics. Let's talk politics. I hit the wrong key there.
What's going on, Freddie?
How you doing, Anthony?
All right.
I wanted to actually, we're gonna, you mentioned bringing this up. You wanted to look at it. I thought it'd be a good idea to discuss it with you. But before we get into that, I wanted to ask you really quick. Did you watch or did you see any of the meeting? Was it 2 days ago? In terms of the districting, the new district maps?
Yeah, I saw some of it. Yeah, on your podcast.
What did you think? Any thoughts on that?
I think that well, to be funny, I mean, for a while I was trying to nail down who it was that Breen looked like, because I knew he looked like somebody, because I'm always giving people nicknames and stuff like that. I have a few of my own, but for a while I was like, it's right at the tip of my tongue. It's like a face I've seen all the time. I think I seen him on TV, and then it just hit me with, oh my God, the diabetes.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah. Wilford Brimley. You still didn't look him up? I sent you that link. I figured you get a kick out of it. Wilford Brimley. You don't remember the guy who used to do those infomercials about managing the diabetes?
No.
Diabetes. The guy was a diabetic. He was an actor and had the mustache. And every time I see Breen now, I can't stop laughing. But anyway, I don't know.
Well, a lot of people were upset with Breen yesterday. That meeting. A lot of people. So was Mike. Not Mike, but Ron Matten, who kind of made some comments at him. And people didn't like that. Even people who were upset about the redistricting and Mike Breen, he made a comment about his weight.
I couldn't really hear a lot of what he was saying, and I could tell that people were not happy about what's going on, just like everything else.
And I don't know if politics in Yonkers is ruthless. I mean, they insult, they don't care. And I don't know if anyone got a chance to hear the video of Moranti say, let's wrap up this meeting before the city council president gets her voodoo doll after me.
Yeah, I saw that on the little clip you posted of it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, what is that about?
I have no idea. Oh, Wilford Brimley. Someone said, "Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, Wilford Brimley." So,
Brimley.
Brimley, Wilford Brimley. What is it, Wilford? What?
It's Brimley. It's BRI.
Brimley.
You Googling him?
Yeah, I mean, at this point now, someone else is mentioning it. I might as well. Actually, you know what? I know this guy. I like this guy. He's been in some movies that I've actually liked. I used to watch a lot of movies in the 80s.
He's I think he's deceased now.
Yeah, but I guess maybe. I guess I just think it's funny though. But really quick, I'll show it to people in case anyone is wondering what you're referring to. Right? Is that him?
Yeah, that's one pick of him. He looks more like Breen without the hat and the glasses, though. And
that's funny.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we spoke early in the week, and you wanted to I posted that video of Mike Spano. I posted two videos, actually. One when he was in the assembly in the 90s, and he first spoke about being molested as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old. And then he spoke about it again very recently with a woman by the name of Maria Trusa. And he, mentioned it again. There were some, slight variations in the story. And so you said it'd be a good idea, if I can kind of go over. And I did ask kind of what you thought about it. I asked a lot of people actually, that anyone I could anyway, what were their thoughts on it. And so, yeah, he said, let's talk about it. I said, yeah, it's a good idea. Let's kind of dissect that. And, people who may be watching could kind of, give their input as well. So don't be afraid. Comment. We'd like to hear from you as well. What do you think? What do you think? That one?
There's Breen.
He's a lot older. Huh. You are right. He does look just like him. Sorry, I know it's stupid for spelling it wrong now. It's okay. Well, anyway, let's get to the Mike's battle. Let's start with the one from the assembly. This is I'm not sure what year this is.
Let me give you a little background
about
how the police treat these kind of complaints. And in the political arena, or just really in the court of public opinion, it's kind of mandatory these days that whenever somebody tells a story like this, you have to believe them. You have to believe every word of it automatically. And if you don't, for any reason, that you're somehow a bad person.
Yeah, we're really very politically correct these days.
Right. So, and I think that in situations where people are making a complaint like this, I think it's good to start from a position of giving them the benefit of the doubt that they're telling the truth.
Sure.
But a police officer's plight, as in most things, is not quite so simple, because obviously the effects on a person's life of being accused of something like this, and to have it turn out that it wasn't true, the damage you can do to a person's reputation is obviously, it can be irreparable.
Right.
The damage you do to that person's life, their employment, everything, every aspect of their life. So in situations where someone comes forward with a complaint like this, and there is really no evidence other than just one person's word versus another person, it's you have to get it right, and you have to you can't start from a position of, I'm just going to believe every word this person says. Really, you don't start from a position at all. You just listen.
Right.
When a complaint like this rolls in, and they happen all the time, unfortunately.
Right. You don't want to have kind of like a preconceived, determined whatever. You don't want anything to taint what, from you actually finding out what really happened.
No, not at all. You can't start with a predisposition. You don't know anything about the case that's coming in. So you just sit and you start talking with the person, and you start listening. That's it. And if the person is lying, the red flags will start popping up all over the place. And the more you do of these types of interviews, the more you start to develop a sense, maybe even earlier on in the interview, whether or not the person is being truthful with you. So, as a cop, you have to listen to what's being said. You have to observe the demeanor of the person telling the story. And you have to listen to it, and while at the same time realizing that if it isn't true, you're about to do a hell of a lot of damage to another person's life. So it's, and to be quite honest with you, in situations like that where it's one person's word against another, you're really not going to move ahead with any arrests or anything like that, probably without having a conference with the district attorney anyway.
Now, I was going to ask you that, right? Like, so, in your experience, right, if, family calls you, right, and they said, you get to their home and they said, hey, my son, my 12-year-old or 13-year-old was missing for 3 hours. And then he came back, he told us that this person had kidnapped him, right? And, I guess maybe molested him or tried to molest him. And what would you do, right? If there was no, you find the guy eventually, right? Like in the story the next day, and then he says, I didn't do it. The child saying he did. What do you guys do in that situation?
Well, obviously you'd have to. Well, there's a lot wrong with the story, so I was thinking maybe we would just go through. We would watch it.
So you want
the problems with it, but
yeah,
obviously you're gonna have to have a talk with the kid, obviously.
Yeah, well, let's play for people who may not have seen it, and
right.
I'm gonna play the first one because I want to play both of them so people also can compare.
Mm-hmm.
Who don't know, and I'll say it right here publicly, I am a victim of a child molester, and this. Something that happened back in 1977 when I was 12 to 13 years old. It was something that has profoundly changed my life. I think it's very important that the legislators here and the people of this state see and feel through the eyes of a 12-year-old the pain and the suffering that went through. I'm a lucky person. I didn't go through it for long. It was just a few hours. Afterwards, I had to go through the pains of trying to convince my 15 brothers and sisters that please don't tell anybody. Let's keep this a secret. Years later, even while I was dating young ladies, I would be totally petrified that maybe she might find that out and somehow maybe my life or that relationship would be in jeopardy. But let me tell you a little bit about it, because I think it's important that we all know about it. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if we choose to hide this thing, it's not going to go away. This is something that is real. It's something that happens every day. And it may have even happened to members here who may choose not to bring it out. When I was 12 or 13 years old, I was walking to pick up milk. And on my way home, by an area called Leslie Sutherland Park.
You know, it might seem like a trivial detail, his age, to say 12 or 13 years old, and people say, well, you know, maybe he just doesn't remember.
Right.
But you know, first of all, in my experience, I always said that I always thought, you know, probably just a little bit more than half of these kinds of stories that come in, believe it or not, are false. I don't know what the actual numbers are. This is just my personal experience as a cop. You know, people are constantly coming in with some sort of a complaint of sexual abuse. And in my personal experience, probably a little bit more than half of them were false for a variety of reasons. People make things like this up for retaliatory reasons, you know, and I'm not trying to say that, you know, all people are full of shit when they tell these kinds of stories, because obviously that's not the case.
Right. It's kind of like a CPS thing, right? Like kind of using that.
Right. Right. Or a family offense petition thing.
Right.
But more on that in the future.
Well, according to CNN, studies, show that about 2 and 10% of sexual assaults are false reports.
2 and 10%? What does that mean?
Between 2 and 10% of the reports are false.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more than that. And like I said, there are a variety of reasons. Sometimes you have, you know, a teenager who maybe wants to dodge responsibility for having had sex with another teenager. That happens a lot. And usually the longer they go on talking, they just don't want to be there anymore, and they'll come out and admit that that's what it was. You know, obviously you don't hear about these things because these things don't make the news. When someone comes in with a false report, and it happens frequently, you don't hear about it on the news because it's just like, okay, we got the truth out of the person. And, you know, especially if it's a young person, you just send them home with their parents, and that's the end of that. You know, it's never a headline in the newspaper.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say it doesn't capture people's attention, like, you know, like it actually happened and all this other gruesome stuff, right?
Right, but you know, the way you can tell is, you know, you don't badger people to try to find out if they're telling you the truth or not. You just listen for inconsistencies in the story, or things that just flat out don't make any sense. You know, and they say they like to not make people, especially younger people, relive the experience over and over by telling the story over and over again. But the truth of the matter is that that's how sometimes it's the only way to spot problems in a story, because people who have been through these things genuinely, they don't forget the details.
Right.
They don't, and they're very emotional while talking about it. Right. They get the details the same over and over and over and over again every single time they tell the story.
Well, that's something that people have said. You know, they mentioned that he wasn't sure about his age. You know, and every, you know, people said, well, I would definitely know what age I was. You know. And so, you know, the fact that he didn't know that. And then also I looked at the way he recanted the story with really lacking emotion. More, it looked like he's just thinking about keeping the story straight or remembering what to say, right?
It's a very, very scripted story.
Right.
Because you can see at a lot of points, he'll just stop and he'll look down and he'll just take a pause long enough to try to remember which part comes next.
Right.
And there's even a couple of parts where you can see he catches himself skipping ahead. And then he stops what he was about to say and goes back to something else that was in the middle that he missed, you know. So it's very, very scripted, which doesn't mean that it's untrue, you know, by itself.
Right.
Because obviously he's a politician and he's in a political arena and he wants to tell the story a certain way. So just because it was scripted doesn't mean that it's untrue. But when you take that into consideration with all the inconsistencies and all the things that just don't make sense at all, I'm not buying it.
Well, just to give a little context, the video that we're watching was when he was an assemblyman and he was pushing Megan's Law, that bill. So, you know, and that's something that he's still pretty much known for. That's kind of like, you know, what he did, you know, as a time in assembly. So let me play the video some more here.
Down in Yonkers, only a block away from my home, an individual walked by me and said, do you have a cigarette? And I said, no. And he walked on past me, and I was paying attention to what I was doing, and he had walked up into the woods. When I walked past those woods, he grabbed me and pulled me into the woods. And it continued from that point. It was a very scary experience, to say the least. I will say that these individuals operate on a compulsion, and it was very, very difficult because at the moment you try to pull away, it's almost as if this individual was loving the fact you were trying to get away and wanted to keep you there. So I had to try a different approach. My approach turned out to be what may have saved my life. It could have. I don't know. But thank God I'm here. But there are children out there who, let me tell you something, there are children out there who have not saved their lives, who maybe were not as fortunate as I was. But let me tell you a little bit about it. When I said to the individual, you know, I said to him, I said, I have 8 brothers. And I thought maybe that would help. Figured he'd think that they were going to come out to get him. And I tried to pull away. And I tried to speak to this individual. And then I tried, because I knew that he was taking me up way into deep of those woods. And I knew that I was going to be gone. Because he wanted to film dirty movies or tried to do certain things. And he did try to do certain things. Certain things that I'd better off just not announcing here. But when I convinced him, and what I did was I said to him, you know, I was a Boy Scout. My mother's expecting me home, and she's going to be down here looking for me. So you got to let me go. If you let me go, I'll come back tomorrow. And he said to me, and he continued, and like I said, it's continued for about 3 or so hours. And he said to me, and I'm trying to make the long story short, you know, how am I going to figure that you're going to come back? And I said to him, trust me, you know, I don't lie. I was lying straight through my teeth, Madam Speaker, but I said it to him, I don't lie. I want to get out of this. And long and short of it is, he let me go. Let me leave.
Now, hold on.
I promised that I would be back in.
So he played with the guy for 3 hours to let him leave just so he could come back.
Did you notice really quick that you know, he kept touching the mic, right? He kept fiddling with the mic. And I noticed that. I'm like, why he keeps touching the mic? Yeah, I mean, that's one thing. He was you know, aware enough, you know, in this scary situation, because I mean, being kidnapped was was a real nightmare for me. Like, I literally had nightmares as a kid of being kidnapped. I would wake up in the middle of the night, like, thank God I'm still in my bed in my home, you know, because it felt that real. So, you know, he was there, you know, negotiating and being aware enough to say, hey, you know what? Let me think of what I can do. Let me tell him that I'm going to come back the next day at 1 o'clock. Let me see if that will work.
I mean, look, I don't put it past a 12-year-old who's been snatched up by some creep and dragged into the woods to say anything to try to get out of it, you know. Yeah, okay, sure, I have 8 brothers. Okay, maybe I would say that if I had 8 brothers. The problem for me is that he says the creep is going along with this. You know how long it takes a pedophile to do what he wants with a kid?
Right.
15 minutes, 20 minutes. So he sat there for 3 hours with you.
Negotiating, essentially.
Negotiating what? I mean, what he wanted to do with you, he could have done 12 times over in those 3 hours.
Right.
And then sent you on your way and not had to come back the next day.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. I've never heard a story like that.
Those are the red flag words. Tried. I still can't figure out what happened. He is also almost claiming to be a profiler. You know.
Yeah. Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say that you know, that's another thing I thought. I mean, these individuals that are willing to kidnap a kid and to do this they have, maybe not, maybe they do it on a whim, but I would think that they planned this, right? And so they have their whole plan set. They know what they're going to do. They're not going to take 3 hours of that plan, right, of their time, that when they know they're limited on time. They have to be very careful if they want to get away with this crime that they're about to commit, right? To sit there and just negotiate with him for 3 hours.
Yeah, they're impulsive too. I mean, it's they doesn't mean they don't plan things out. I'm sure they do, but you know, people with that illness, and I really do believe it is an illness. They behave impulsively. They take their chance and they act on it. You know what I mean? I've heard of pedophiles going online and meeting children,
Yeah,
adolescents, whatever.
like James Sertavo.
And yeah, well, and they make an appointment. Oh, let's meet up here. They pretend to be somebody else,
Right.
And they meet the kid, and then once they have them, that's it.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's
They
it.
do what they want with them. You know what I mean? I've never heard of a pedophile snatching up a kid, getting him to a secluded area, and then having a chat about, hey, do you want to do this now, or we'll come back?
Let's schedule a date.
It doesn't make any sense.
Right. I mean, they're risking being caught because what if the kid doesn't, does go and tell right away, which, I would think that's what they're going to do. Right.
Yeah.
And they just risk so much. Right. And so it doesn't make sense that they would agree to that,
Yeah,
And
not at
so
all. Not at all. I mean,
he has 7 brothers, not 8. Also, I believe only 2 brothers returned to him the next morning. Where was his dad?
In that spot, 11 o'clock, to go way into the woods to film dirty movies with other girls and other people that he knows. But you know what I did while I was there too? Something that your parents teach you. I knew that if I got away, that I was going to study this person. I was going to know everything about that person. And I did. I studied him. I could tell you that he had beige pinstripe pants, that he had no socks, he had brown moccasins, he had a cream-colored shirt, a slight goatee with a little bit of gray beard. I could tell you every little bit about that person. I studied him because I knew that if I got away, he was going to see his day in court. When I got home, and let me tell you, when I did leave, and as soon as I got away from him, I ran. And I may not have been crying on the outside, but I was crying so hard on the inside because I didn't know what to do. But I was running home, and I ran around the corner. He had run to the other corner, and I saw him, and I stopped. I stopped crying, and I looked at him, and I waved. And I said, I'll see you tomorrow.
Can you pause?
He smiled at me, and he waved back. And I went home.
He says, I wasn't crying on the outside, but I was crying on the inside. And then when he ran to the corner and the creep went to the other corner, he saw him and he stopped crying. But he just said he wasn't crying.
Good point. Yeah, see?
You stopped crying on the inside?
Lieutenant DiMaggio, I didn't catch that. And, look, if that was me, I would have never stopped to wave at him. I would have been running fast. And if I seen him, I would have ran even faster than when I was already running if I could. You know what I mean? All the way home. Let her forget stopping and waving. That's crazy.
There are a whole lot of things that don't make a whole lot of sense about it.
Would you shoot the pedophile if you were Spano's parents?
No.
I mean, if you really did that, I mean, listen, I'd consider it. I definitely, but I don't know. I don't want to go to jail.
Yeah, we'll get to that part of the story. That's where it really starts to get crazy.
And I called the police, and I saw my sister. And as I was telling the police, my sister started screaming, "Oh God!" and ran out of the room. You have to know what that feels like. I tried to. I didn't want to tell my mother. Obviously, I didn't want to tell my father. How could you tell your father anything like this? Macho guy, you don't want to tell him this stuff. So I didn't want to tell him. And the police came and they interviewed me. And I went through the whole thing, not realizing that my mother was behind me. And I turned my head and I looked at her, and I looked in her eyes. I have not forgotten the look in her eyes to this day, how she turned her head, she sobbed, and she walked out of the room. The pain that she was feeling, the pain my father was feeling, the pain they all were in. Kind of the pain that you feel, the violation you feel. And I tried to convince the police department that I had successfully convinced him that tomorrow, 1 o'clock, he'll be there. The police.
Hold on a second. You got to pause it right there.
And I'm not.
He just said that he convinced the cop I don't know exactly how he worded it, but he told the cop that he convinced the guy that he'd be back at 1 o'clock.
Right.
Now hold on, wait a minute. Go back 2 minutes earlier. Go to if you just rewind it for a second, we can come back to where we are now. But go back to 4:35 or about 4:32.
All right.
Right.
Let me leave. With the promise that I would be back in that spot 11 o'clock to go way into the woods.
Good catch.
That's a red flag. That's a
He
problem.
said 11 o'clock. That's red flag.
Now, that's two different times he gave in the same speech, 2 minutes apart.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, well, I haven't told this story in 40 years or 20 years. And now that I'm telling it, I gave a different time than when I last told it 20 years ago. You just said 11 o'clock 2 minutes ago. Now it's 1 o'clock. People who are real victims of these types of incidents don't forget those details. They don't.
Well, he told the pedophile that he'd be back at 11, and then when he told the police, he told them 1 o'clock. So
Well, he
They're
told
not
them
gonna
that he
catch
told the pedophile.
well,
He
he
told the
told
pedophile 11, and then he told the police that he told the pedophile 1.
maybe he wanted him to get away.
I've not forgotten the look in her eyes to this day, how she turned her head, she sobbed, and she walked out of the room. The pain that she was feeling, the pain my father was feeling, the pain they all were in. Kind of pain that you feel, violation you feel. And I tried to convince the police department that I had successfully convinced him that tomorrow, 1 o'clock, he'll be there. The police department decided that, and I'm not in any way saying anything negative about the police department, don't get me wrong, but they felt that it was better that they stake it out that night. He's probably in the park, we'll find him. And I said, no, he's not in the park. He will be there tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And they said, no, he won't be. The next day, a former colleague of us, Senator Spano, who was just driving for the family law business at the time,
Stop it for a second.
went with my brother Lenny.
Okay.
And they said, 1 o'clock.
So he memorized everything the guy was wearing, okay?
Right.
What did he say? He said,
Yeah, beige pinstripe pants, cream shirt,
no,
and brown
he says,
moccasins.
in this video, he says shorts. I think.
No, he said pants. I didn't hear shorts.
Was it pants in this? I thought
Yeah, I
it
wrote
was pants
it
in the
down.
next video.
He said beige pinstripe pants. I wrote it down as he's saying it. Cream shirts and brown moccasins. Sound like John Rubo. I'm just kidding. Maybe did he?
Yeah, let's go back and look because I thought I heard shorts, but maybe
Do you
I'm
know
wrong.
what time it was? Maybe you know what time?
No, I don't. I was earlier.
About 3 or so hours, and he said to me, and I'm trying to make the long going to come back. And I said to him, trust me. I speaker, but I said it to him.
Coming up, it's right there.
Then I tried because I knew that he was taking me up way back to go way into the woods to film dirty movies with other girls and other people that he knows. But you know what I did while I was there too? Something that your parents teach you. I knew that if I got away, that I was going to study this person. I was going to know everything about that person. And I did. I studied him. I could tell you that he had beige pinstripe pants, that he had no socks, he had brown mac.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pants.
So
no socks.
All right. Yeah, but that's not important. The important point is he memorized the guy's description.
Right.
And gave it to the police.
And he remembers it to this day.
Right. And told them that the guy was going to come back at 1 o'clock to meet him. And the cops just decided then and there, nah, he's not. He's not gonna. So you know what? We're not even going to go back the next day. Are you fucking kidding me? I mean.
Well, he did say that they went to look for him that same day.
Okay. Right. I'm sure they would. Because you're going to go canvass the area, when a 12-year-old is telling you a story like this.
Right.
But the 12-year-old is telling you very specifically, whether it was 11 or 1, whatever it was, I'm telling you, the guy let me go on the grounds that I'm going to meet him again the next day at 1 o'clock. And the police don't go? Not even like put a couple of cops out and plainclothes.
Yeah, I thought that too. At least just to check it out. You never know, right? I mean, if they let him go, if this guy really did this and he let him go, and then maybe he's stupid enough to show up, right?
And he
But
says, I'm not trying to say anything bad about the police. Well, what you're saying is that they just
wanted to make sure of that point.
What you're saying is that they just completely disregarded, the opportunity to catch a pedophile in the woods,
right?
At a time that he told you he'd be there,
right?
I mean, it doesn't make a wink of sense.
Because if you're telling the truth, then they let a pedophile go, essentially, right? But I was going to say that he remembers what the guy was wearing, right? The details of it, even till this day, but he doesn't remember the exact time, 11 or 1, and he also doesn't remember his age, 12 or 13, but he does remember what he was wearing.
Senator Spano, who was just driving for the family oil business at the time, went with my brother Lenny. And they said, 1 o'clock, we're going to go to the woods, and we're going to check it out. 1 o'clock, they went there. Don't you know it? He was sitting there in the spot waiting for me to come. Right in that spot. Lo and behold, ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues, he was wearing the same clothes, the same brown moccasins, the same pants, no socks. And sure enough, when my brother said to the police department, I know it's him, after they captured him, they said, why do you know it's him? He said, my brother described him to a T. He said, including the gray hair on his chin. And he said, no, that's Lynn. He pulled it off. He subsequently was let go because there was not enough proof. Obviously, there was no witnesses. I was not raped, sodomized, thank God. And you probably wonder why I tell the story. I tell the story because I want you to feel what I felt. I want you to see what someone goes through. I was lucky. I didn't go through one iota what some of our young children go through. I didn't go through one iota what some of our young children go through. But I think if you understand what I went through, maybe you'll see the need for laws like this. Maybe you'll see the need. In Westchester County alone, there are over 220 convicted sexual pedophiles. I don't know where they are.
All right.
And you know what? If I knew that someone lived across the street from my home who was a pedophile, I would treat my child a little different. Maybe I'd treat that person a little different. Maybe that's what we don't want to hear. We don't want to.
All right.
I think that's good on that one. I'm going to get to the other one, but go ahead.
So Nikki and Lenny went.
Yes.
Of course. You don't send the cops. You send the A-team.
Well, he said that they went because they wanted to see if he was going to show up, right? Because the cops didn't believe him. So they weren't going to show up at 1 o'clock. So Nick and Lenny went, and sure enough, he was there in the woods again, waiting, wearing the same clothes. Maybe he never left.
If the cops didn't believe him then, they don't now either. But look, you always have to be careful of any story in which the details that are being provided are entirely unverifiable, except for a couple of people who are extremely close to the person telling the story, especially when all three of them have a track record of not being the most honest people in the world. So in other words, to verify this story, there's no cop you can go ask, right? Because he says the cops didn't do anything. Who would you have to go ask? You'd have to go ask Nikki or Lenny. Oh, part of the crime family. Apparently, those are the only two people who could verify this. Maybe the sister, whichever sister it was that he was talking about, was crying behind him in the living room.
But there wouldn't be a record of the call that came in or something. I mean, you still got to log it in, right?
Going back to 77, I'm sure nothing was done by computer back then. It was I'm sure it was all handwritten, So, look, it also was a very different time and things were done differently back then. But I don't care whatever you're in. If a 12-year-old tells a story like that to the police and tells them this guy let me go and is expecting me to be back at 1 o'clock tomorrow, the police are going at 1 o'clock. Right. No doubt about it.
Right.
Absolutely none. None of this. We don't believe you. Nah, you're wrong, kid. Don't worry. He ain't going to be there. And then, let us know if your brothers find anything. I mean, come on, bro.
Right.
You know what I mean? But the story needs to be like that, so that if anybody wanted to verify it, they would have to go to the people who will lie for him. You know what I mean?
Right.
Now, I don't know why he's even bothering with a story like this, trying to pass Megan's Law. I didn't do my research into the passing of Megan's Law. I don't imagine it was a terribly controversial law. I don't imagine it was a terribly
No, it's
tough sell.
basically about the like kind of the creating the registry right here. And,
Yeah, right.
Identifying, where pedophiles or sex offenders, child sex offenders are located or living. They're in your community.
Because the girl, what was her name? Megan. I can't remember her last name. She was killed. She was raped and killed by a previously convicted sex offender who moved in the house right across the street from her family, and no one knew. So,
right.
I mean, pretty much every state in the country said we can't let this happen again. So I don't think it was a tough sell. I don't know, what the point of even him telling the story back then was. I think I know what the point of him telling it now is.
Really quick, Megan's Law is named after 7-year-old Megan Kanka, a New Jersey girl who was raped and killed by a known registered sex offender who had moved across the street from the family without their knowledge. In the wake of the tragedy, the Kankas sought to have local communities warn about sex offenders in their area. So they have a registry, but I guess Megan's Law was about warning them that they have moved into the area, so now they have to announce it.
Right.
And so, all right. So I'm gonna play the second one. I think that was everything on that one, right? Or is there anything else on that one?
Yeah, I mean, you can't really get to some of the discrepancies until we, look at the second one. Because
I'm gonna show the second one here. And this one was a recent interview he had with a woman named Maria Trusa, about she does a show, Yo Digo No Mas, I Say No More, in Spanish. It's about saying no more and standing up to sexual victimization and stuff like that.
This is in.
Let me play it here. So well, you know about it. I was just playing the people may not know about it.
Important for us to be here and to having this conversation. And I think if the more people hear about it, it will help people, and at the same time expose those who would be willing to do this against young people.
You have been a mayor of Yonkers for 10 years. Wow. You've done amazing things. And I know that at a very young age, you became an assembly member, right?
Right. So I got elected at 27 to the state assembly. I was the youngest member to serve at that time. And then, there was this move to pass Megan's Law, a 6-year-old New Jersey girl who was raped and murdered. So we said, we now have an internet. Pop up a name if you live in a neighborhood, and you'll know who the sexual predators are. And that was a bill that was going around the country, and started to think about my own experience. And I said, you know what, this is something that we need to champion. And I worked with my colleagues, and we were able to get that bill passed. It was the first time I had really gotten up, spoke on the floor of the assembly. I was 27 years old. I never spoke about my incident with anyone other than the police detectives when I was 12. It gave me an ability to have an outlet on something that I never talked about, that I probably internalized for a long time. Never had a conversation with anybody about it. Never had a conversation with my own father about what happened to me that day. He knows what happened to me. He read the police report. He dealt with the pain, I'm sure, of that. But never had a then. You didn't have someone who would say, this kid should see a psychiatrist, right? Or he should get some kind of counseling. It was basically a dark time for people like us who were sexually assaulted, because it was the dirty little secret no one ever wanted to talk about. Let's not talk about it. Let's not embarrass our child. Many parents took that position, that they didn't want their child embarrassed.
Right. So that's why the work that we're doing with Yo Digo No Mas is extremely important, because we need to.
He said that, you gave me, right? He said that his dad read the police report, right? So he knows what happened. So there is a police report, I guess, based on what he said there. I'm just saying that. I just talking about a record.
If there is, then he should put it out there, because a lot of people are not buying his story.
Yeah.
You know, and if he did something like that, then obviously it would be tougher to say I don't believe him. Well, not that he couldn't have one fabricated, but it would be tough to have one fabricated that looked like it was written in 1977. People were not writing reports on computers back then. So, that's the kind of thing he would need to do if he wanted more people to believe the story.
Asked me to go to Key Food down McLean Avenue, next to my house, next to our house. Going to pick up a gallon of milk. I'm one of 16 children, so somehow I was the person who had to go pick up the milk.
You say you were one of?
I am one of 16 children, yeah. So I walked to Key Food, picked up the milk. I was walking back, and when you're walking back, to your left is a park, basically just wooded area, right? And so just when you get to the end of the wooded area, there is a warehouse with a staircase. It basically goes up to nowhere, but it goes up into the woods and then that far. And so I'm walking, with the milk, and some gentleman walked by me. He said, "Hey, do you have a cigarette?" So why he asked a 12-year-old, "Why you have a cigarette?" And I told him no. And so as I walked past that stairwell, he grabbed me by the arm and pulled me into the stairs. And, he was first very nice, just talking to me. And, but had his hand firmly on my arm. So, it was not letting it go, right?
You must have been really scared.
It was into the woods on the last one, right?
What's that?
So
really quick, in this story, he mentions woods, but he also mentions a staircase in a warehouse now, right? He never mentioned that in the first story. He said that he was taken deep into the woods, but this time now he was brought up some staircase in the woods that would lead to a warehouse.
Right. People say, well, that's a small detail, Well, yeah, but that's important. I mean, because
pulled up to the stairs or into the woods.
Believe it or not, people who are genuinely victims of these types of things don't get those details wrong.
Right.
They certainly don't change them from one telling of the story to the next.
But extremely calm for some reason. I think about it, and I'm often surprised that I was able to, because I knew that every time I either panicked or if I pulled the other way, there was part of me that said to me, I think he's enjoying this. The other part of it was, the further he pulls me up those stairs, would be less of a chance that I'm ever going to get out of this. So he pulled me up probably halfway up the stairs, and it was, by that point, I was out of view of of the site. And I was trying to figure out, how am I going to get out of this? And I at one point I decided, I don't know why, maybe saved my life, I don't know, that I'm going to tell him that I'm okay with this, that I'm going to go into the woods with you. Because I knew maybe if I can continue to talk to him and I could keep him from really getting me there. So I decided to lie to him, tell him that this was something I wanted to do. But I told him that I'm my father who's waiting for me just up the street, and that he'd be really upset.
All right, pause it for a second.
I'm not home really soon.
In the assembly, it was his mother. Did you catch that?
Yes. And now it's his father waiting at home for him.
Right. Now, could it have been both? Sure. But why not just say that? Why not just say my parents?
Right.
It's an inconsistency, and they all start to add up.
Right.
You know what I mean? The inconsistencies.
Also, he says that he decided to lie and tell him that he was enjoying it, that he actually liked this, right? but that his dad was waiting at home for him and was expecting him home. And so he's going to get, ready to say that, so I told him that I would come back the next day. Right.
Right. And that's when the creep let him go. Yeah.
Right. But he never mentioned that in the first time at the assembly. He just said that, he just told him, listen, I promise you I will come back. I promised. He never said that I said I liked it, that I, because that's a really, a detail that you wouldn't forget, because I know if I was the kid and I came up with this strategy that worked and it was incredible, I would have been like, yeah. And I did the strategy where I told him that I liked it, right? It made him believe it. It would be consistent, right? He never mentioned that part the first time. Now he's saying the story that he liked.
Well, yeah, it could be. That could be him tailoring the story to the setting and to the audience. I mean, that might not be something you want to admit in a room full of, mostly male state assembly.
Right.
But when you're one-on-one with a female who
you
show about, yeah.
And he never mentions what actually happened, but he does make sure to say that he was not sodomized. Right. That was like something he wants to say. I wasn't sodomized.
Right. So I guess he kind of leaves you to do the deductive reasoning and come to the conclusion that he was fondled in some sort of a way, but not actually raped or sodomized. That does happen. But what really gets me is, so he was able to convince this creep, this pedophile, to let him go on the grounds that his father would be angry if he were home late.
Right.
But the pedophile is not concerned about his father being angry that he fondled his son.
Yeah.
So in other words, let's make sure you're home before curfew, because we don't want your dad to be mad about that. But come back tomorrow and I'll sexually abuse you, because I'm not worried about your father being mad about that at all.
Well, I mean, I guess maybe he's saying that, his father would be expecting him. So then maybe he might come out looking for him. So not to make it, a problem, let's reschedule this. Right. Let's finish.
So in order for him to believe all that, he would actually have to believe that he wanted to do it and that he wouldn't say anything. I mean,
and that's what he said. He was telling him that he lied to him this time, and that he told him he liked it and wanted to make him believe that he wanted to do it, but just not now, because his father would be waiting for, always expecting him, and he can get in trouble. So,
Okay, yeah. So it's not impossible that, a kid might say something like that. The problem for me is that the pedophile believed it. That's what I'm just not buying.
Right.
I've never seen anything like that or heard of anything like that.
And again, this is probably a good hour, and he would, every chance he could, he would pull me a little further, and then he would touch a little more, and he'd reach for a little more, or get his access to a little more, and I kept on telling him, okay, I'll be okay with this. I said, but if I'm not home, he's gonna be really upset, and he's gonna come looking for me, and we're both gonna be in a lot of trouble. And he eventually he let me go. He let me leave. And so I calmly walked down the stairs. But I'm gonna tell you something. While I was there, while I was talking to him, while he was doing the things he was doing, I studied him. I studied what he was wearing. I knew about his no socks, his moccasins, and his brown pants with the, with the lines down, to his shirt, to his white shirt, and to his little gray hairs on his chin. I studied him because I knew I was going to get out of this mess somehow. And then when I did, I was going to make sure that everyone knew who this guy was. And, like I said, after a long ordeal, I was able to work my way out. And I convinced him that I'd be back there the next day at 1:00. And so when he let me go, and he stayed on the stairs, and I left, and I walked. Now it's a big, long warehouse, so you have to go around the warehouse and then go up. And when I left there, all of a sudden, I was very emotional. I couldn't breathe.
Right.
I wanted to run hard, and I ran as fast as I could. And I was
also
home. Now I crossed the street. Now you don't cross the street, right? My parents used to tell me, you don't cross the street because we're on the same side of the street. I crossed the street. Tice was smart enough to cross the street. And I was running. And as I was running past the back of the warehouse, there he was, waiting for me. But I was across the street.
The man?
Yeah. So he was waiting for me, and I was running. And when I saw him, I immediately stopped running. I was completely out of breath. I just completely stopped running. And I looked across the street at him, and I smiled at him, and I said, I'll see you tomorrow, 11 o'clock. And he said, okay, 11:01. I don't know if it was 11:01, but it was, I see you tomorrow.
You just got the times
And
mixed up again.
And then I got home.
All right, so we'll stop
That's no
there before we
small
start
detail.
talking about
That's no small detail. I mean, that's
yeah. He does it 11:01. He said it again. This time he said 11. He goes, oh no, 1 o'clock, 1 o'clock. But he did that the first time when he was recanting the story at the assembly. Also, as Maeve Scott mentioned, beige or brown pants. You know which one it was. You know, he said he studied them. You know, and he got the color wrong. And then he said a white shirt. But I believe he said a different color shirt. I don't know if he said white shirt before. Cream shirt.
Cream shirt.
Cream white, I guess, you know, and the same brown moccasins with no socks, you know, similar to what he's wearing actually at that interview, the brown moccasins, right?
Right. But genuine victims of these types of things, I'm telling you, they don't deviate from those small details.
Right.
They know that their credibility is tied up in the details. So they make sure to get it right every single time with the exact same language. They know.
And then he says he ran across the street, right? He know, even though he says he knows he's not supposed to cross the street, but he said I ran across the street, and then he, you know, went I guess I don't know, around the warehouse, and then there the guy was across on the other corner across from him. You know, they never mentioned the warehouse or anything stairs before.
I haven't worked over in that area. That's where I worked when I first got on the job in the 3rd precinct, and I haven't worked over there in a while. I haven't been over that way in a while, and so you know, off the top of my head, I can't think of exactly which spot over by Leslie Sutherland Park he's talking about.
I don't even know where that's at. You can maybe give us an idea of where Leslie Sutherland Park is?
Yeah, you can see. You can see Leslie Sutherland Park from South Broadway in the winter. You're up through the trees, up on the hill. How to get there exactly? It's really not a park. It's more of like a.
Oh yes. That's where they had the old hotel, right? Remember the old hotel there?
I'm gonna give you the name of the street right now. I just don't remember.
Yeah, there used to be a hotel there. It goes down to McLean Avenue there. There was like there, you know, that's the picture there. Yeah, I was actually reading about that recently. That's maybe where Dutch Schultz, the gangster, hid some of his you know, treasure that he stole, that they said could be worth you know, what, $50 million and maybe more now.
Yeah, it's right. It's over Cliff Street, right? Right.
Yeah, it's a nice area. That Park Hill. If you go up in the Park Hill section of Yonkers, that's where you'll find it. Very nice, actually. But yeah, I'm trying to. So he says he was walking to the Key Food. Was there Key Food near there? I mean, Leslie Sutherland Park. That's up Park Hill. There's nothing really there. It's just.
So if you walk down that hill, sort of, I think northbound from that spot, you'll walk down a road. It's very narrow, and I think, you know, last I remember, it was a one-way coming up toward the park. But you can get down to South Broadway from there. McLean. I mean, I guess you can somehow. Undercliff, right? Yeah, that's it.
Well, there used to be a hotel. So yes, there was back in the day an elevator that would take people down to McLean. South Broadway would be that area there where you see here. That's facing McLean more, right? So you can go down a little where that car headed, then you'd be more toward the South Broadway street. But this is actually facing the McLean.
Yeah, it's right there on that corner, McLean and South Broadway.
Oh yes, so that's the Key Food. Yes, I remember where the Walgreens is now.
That had to be where it was. Yeah.
Yes, right. It's a Walgreens now. And I would wonder, I guess if you go down, I don't know how you would get down there easy unless you go down this one little narrow street, but then you'd have to walk all the way down. You have to walk a little bit down South Broadway anyway
Right.
to McLean,
Yeah.
and then
Right.
come back up.
If you keep going in the direction that that car is going right now, right?
So where's the warehouse and the stairs there?
That I don't know off the top of my head. Might ring a bell if I drove through there and saw it. But
Oh, I drive through there. I've been through there, and I don't. And I recently was at Leslie Sutherland Park because I was reading about it being in a hotel and stuff, and you can still see some of it there. So I went by, and I love that area, actually, that old Park Hill neighborhood. It's very nice.
yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, that's just, he says now there's a hotel. I mean, there's a warehouse. He was taking up some stairs. That wasn't ever mentioned in the first, the assembly story. So why is it changed? Why do you think? Is it just that he forgot? Could he have just forgotten? I mean, what do you think?
I mean, look, I think the guy has a credibility problem for that reason, combined with the inconsistencies in the details, combined with the fact that the few details that are provided can only be verified by Nick and Lenny, almost as if it was designed that way. I don't know. I think he's about as much of a sexual abuse victim as he is a real Democrat or a public servant of any kind, for that matter. Or just a decent, nice guy. I think it's all part of his Machiavellian act.
And we'll get into that in a minute, right? Let me finish the video here and we'll discuss.
Call the cops. Cops came. I told my story. Started to tell a story to the police officers. And one of my sisters was in the background. She started crying. She was sobbing. And, that has an effect on you. So I'm sitting there going, all of a sudden now, I'm concerned about her. I don't want her crying over me. So I'm like, right. So I stopped sharing the story at that point. Then we went down to Alexander Street. We didn't go down to Alexander Street. The detective came, drove around looking for this guy. And the detective said, listen, I know that you think this guy's going to be here tomorrow. That guy's gone. He's never coming back. And I said to the detective, he'll be there. I convinced him. I convinced this guy that I was coming back. I said, and I don't ever want to talk about this again, but I'm telling you, because if he had got me way up in those woods, I was not coming back out. But I convinced him to keep me from going into the. I convinced this guy. So the very next day, my brother Nick, who then became a state senator, was in the assembly. He wasn't in the assembly then. I think he just ran for the assembly a few years after that. They drove to the spot. Nick and Lenny drove to the spot. Sure enough, there he was, sitting on the stairs waiting for me to come back. And Lenny jumped out of the car, said, I want to talk to you. And that's when he took off. And they chased him. They caught him. And then they brought him over to my father had a gas station on Riverdale Avenue. So I was there the next day and I saw the police car pull up. And I remember going to the car and looking in the window of the car in the back seat. And there he was. And you know what? Begging me, don't say it. He was looking at me like this going, don't say it. Don't say it. And you know what? I almost said it wasn't him. I just, all of a sudden I felt this, like, oh my God. I was like, this guy is like a mess. I mean, and
you were feeling sorry for him at that moment.
Isn't that weird? And my brother Johnny's looking at me, goes, and is this him? Is this him? And everybody's kind of yelling at me, is this him? Is this him? And I remember at one point I took a back step, and they were like, what's the matter? Is this him? And then I said, yes, it was him. We went to booking.
Pause it for a second.
He was let go because, back then.
All right. So the little procedure that he just spoke about, he probably doesn't know this. No, he said that they brought him
To
to
the
a gas station.
yeah, they
on
brought him to
Riverdale
their
Avenue.
family gas station on Riverdale Avenue.
Yeah. That's called, that type of an identification procedure is one of 4 types. It's called a show up procedure. Actually, in the book that I have in front of me, it's called one-on-one confrontation.
Yeah, I want to know what did when his brother went there the second time he tells the story, and then he took off, and then he says they chased after him, but then it cuts to like police cars and sirens and stuff. So I mean, did Lenny and
No, I don't know. I mean, well, I don't know what Nicky and Lenny looked like in 1977. Yeah, you look at them now. I don't see them catching anybody. But I mean, they're older men now. But for me, the detail that does it is that the cops had no interest in going to see for themselves whether or not the guy was going to be there at 1 o'clock.
right.
To me, that's laughable. I know things were very different back in 1977, but they couldn't have been that different. What
Right.
they had done with the guy once they found him might have been very different back then.
Especially around that year, right? I mean, that's the year Son of Sam and stuff. I mean, I think everybody behind
Yeah, I
alert.
mean,
Yeah,
I just, I can't. It cost them nothing to go back at 1 o'clock the next day and just see if the guy's there.
especially
Then
his
tell
dad
him-
was a politician or his dad was an official, someone known at that point, and a businessman.
Yeah, and I mean it's a very serious accusation. So I just don't, it doesn't make the slightest bit of sense. Unless he's going to tell me that the cops you were talking to were the same 2 that walked into the South Broadway crime scene that night with my daughter's mother. They didn't want to do their job either, but they weren't even born back then, so it couldn't have been them, right?
Right. Yeah, no, it's very strange. It's very strange. Bingo.
Yeah,
Somebody
it's
says
just,
bingo.
it's false.
Right.
It's false.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's just me personally. What does it for me is the way that he's telling the story, right? I mean, I'm good at reading people's face and stuff and knowing when they're being honest and being deceitful, and it just looks like he's making the story up and he's lying. He's really trying to convince you, right, by doing all these extra, body movements and stuff, and I really did convince him. I knew it, and so
He doesn't seem upset at all. I mean,
Yeah.
people who tell these stories who've actually been through them, they tell them in an almost frantic sort of a way.
yeah.
They're not calm while they're telling you this stuff.
Right. It's more like he's really trying to, create the emotion that he would think someone would want to have, or kind of trying to, create the emotion to get you to believe what he's saying, right? And and people might be saying, why would he lie about something like that? And this is politics, man. And in politics, these people are liars. They will lie. And I'm just saying, in general, they will lie to get votes, and that's called the sympathy vote, right? When people, and I learned this, people in politics told me about the sympathy vote. Right? When something happens to you, people feel bad for you or whatever, and they'll vote for you just because they feel sorry for you and they want to see you win now,
Yeah. Well, Well, I'm going to get to my own little twist on that in a second. But getting back to the problem, so that's called a show up procedure. Okay. Now I'm going to read to you straight from this manual. This manual is decades old. It's old as dirt. This is a manual that, believe it or not, they'll still pull 20 out of 90 or so questions on a police promotion exam out of this manual, even though it's very, very old. A lot of the stuff still applies today. Okay. It's very cleverly titled Manual for Police. And in it talks about 4 different types of identifying suspects. One is a photographic identification. In other words, a 6-pack, right? You show a victim or a witness, usually 6, maybe 8 pictures of different people. You hide the suspect somewhere in there among the 8 pictures, right? And you show it to the person and you tell them, you tell them, that the suspect may or may not be in here. You don't have to pick one.
Right.
I want you to only pick one, identify the person if you're 100% sure. Okay. And then you show it to the person. Actually, it's pretty neat the way they do that. Nowadays, they do it in a different way. They do it they call it a double blind, where not only does the person being shown the photographs not know for sure if the suspect is in there, but the cop showing the photographs also doesn't know. So it'll be one cop who does know what's going on, hands the photos to another cop who doesn't know what's going on, knows nothing about the case, has no idea which of the 8 people in there is the possible suspect,
Right.
and hands it to that cop. That cop goes in knowing nothing and gives it to the person who doesn't know anything either.
Right. So no kind of
Right. So nothing can be suggested,
tampered with, right, or tainted.
The second kind is a lineup identification. We all know what that is. We've all seen them in the movies. The third is an artist rendering. And the fourth is this, what the manual calls a one-on-one confrontation. We call it a show-up procedure. Now, here's what it says. A couple of bullet points regarding show-up procedures. Arrange a one-on-one confrontation or a show-up procedure between a witness and a suspect only, A, when there is an extreme necessity, such as when the witness or suspect is in danger of dying, or B, when the confrontation can be arranged shortly after the offense was committed. Now, it doesn't give you a specified time frame, but generally most cops, again, it's not a written rule, but most cops will treat it at about an hour. Past an hour, you don't want to be doing show-up procedures. Why are there limitations? Why don't DAs and judges and courts like show-up procedures? Well, because compared to the other three, it's by far the most suggestive. Okay, when you pull up to a victim and you say, "Oh, we just caught this guy," and then you pull him out of the car and he's in handcuffs, and you're standing there with your hands holding him by the arm while he's in handcuffs, he looks guilty.
Right.
He looks like the guy that did it. You know what I mean? So it's suggestive. That's why the courts don't like it. That's why they want you to do it only within a short amount of time after a crime has taken place. So, in other words, a robbery. I was robbed. You give a description of the guy. Cops go and look for them. They find a guy that fits the description. They think it might be him. They'll hop out. They'll cuff him. They'll bring him over to the location where the victim is. Usually there with another cop. And then they'll pull the guy out of the car. They'll shine the light. If it's at nighttime, I work, I came up on the midnight shift.
Right.
They'll shine the spotlight on him.
So you
And
can't
the
see the
cop sitting
person.
in the car with the victim will say, "Is that him?"
Right.
Only if you're 100% sure.
Right. And then I would think that, because it's not the police officer's job necessarily to determine, the evidence and all that. That's up for the DA and the prosecutor, right? He identified the guy as the guy that, hey, this guy kidnapped me. I mean, and he was gone for 3 hours, right? His family knows that he was gone for 3 hours. So obviously he said he was this guy. This is the guy. Now let's arrest him. Let's take him and let the prosecutor deal with it.
Where I was going with this is that,
or detectives anyway.
They want a show-up procedure generally done within an hour. Now, you're going back 45 years. If someone who was on the job back then, if we could pull, Joe Barker or Willie Cave, these were guys that were on the job since 1969 when I got on. They're now retired, but
right.
They could probably tell us how things were done back then.
Maybe there's somebody that knows about it that actually happened, and they can say, "Hey, yeah, I was there."
But show-up procedure,
it's not that family.
When you get to court, a show-up procedure that was done a full day later, that's going right in the trash. It's going to be like he never ID'd him. The judge is going to throw that right out because they want it done within. If it's going to be a show-up, it's got to be within a short time frame after the crime took place. So if this thing took place with Mike Spano at 4 p.m, if you haven't found the guy on the street by 5 and brought him over to see Mike, so Mike can point him out from the car that he's sitting in, or from the window of the gas station, or wherever it is.
He said he looked into the window of the police car.
If you haven't done all of that within an hour, you're definitely not going to do it the next day.
Right.
That's no good. When you catch someone the next day, or any time after basically an hour or so after the commission of a crime, they don't want you doing a show-up procedure anymore. They want you doing either a lineup or a photo array. Either of those would be a much better option. Forget the time frame. When you're talking about a 12-year-old victim, possible victim of a sexual abuse, you don't want to pull the kid up in front of the gas station and then bring little Mikey out.
Let's bring the pedophile over to where his dad's business is, so he knows where he's at and stuff.
and then you walk little Mikey, who's probably pissing his pants, over to the car to look right into the window at the guy.
Re-traumatize him.
So when you see the urine start coming down the inside of his leg, maybe then he's telling the truth. I mean, it's just no cop in his right mind would do something like that.
Right.
It doesn't make sense.
So you're saying that's not traditional procedure, police protocol,
not.
And that would never happen because it wasn't within a certain time frame for them to do that, right? That type of identification, technique. So what they would have done normally, you would probably have, or what they should have done, or take him to the police station, and at that point, like you said, either do a lineup or show pictures and stuff for him, and he would come in and not have to, be looking into. He said, I looked into the window of the police car, so I mean, he saw the guy saying, "Don't save me." I mean, he was by himself. I mean, you know, he said the guy was telling me not to say it was me or whatever, and he felt bad. You know,
and he was making
yeah,
he's in handcuffs,
and
but
nobody
he's
else
making
sees that.
You know, so the guy's, you know, what is he, just chilling in the back of the police car with no handcuffs? And he's telling him,
Maybe he had him in the front. You're like, no, chill, don't do that. Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you know, he should have consulted a cop. I mean, he has brothers that are cops. He should have, you know, let them put this bullshit story together with him.
Right.
It would have made a lot more sense. You know what I mean?
And maybe they try to tweak it a little bit for this interview. Again, it was a recent interview, and it seems like they changed it a bit, you know, though he did mess up on the 11 or 1 o'clock. You know, he said he forgot. Although he never mentioned, he never mentions the time in the second time around, except when he messes up on the time.
No, I think he did. I think he did. I think, yeah. But that's why he corrected himself, because he must have realized that he said 1 earlier, or yeah, he said. I think in the assembly video he said 11 first, then later on he said 1. This time he said 1 first, and then he said 11. I think that's the way it went.
No, he said 11 again first, and he said no, I mean 1 o'clock or 11 or 1, you know, whatever. He's kind of like whatever, you know. But
I watched him earlier in the week, and then I just watched him real quick before we came on tonight, just to refresh my memory. But,
yeah, no, it's very strange. I'm gonna play the rest of it a little bit. Let's talk about that.
Sure.
He was let go.
Sure. Well, we went. He was arrested. There was never a trial because the detectives told my father, said, "Listen, there's no physical evidence. There's no DNA or anything like that. It's your son's word against him." That was it. There was a point when we left the police station, and I was walking with my brother, and I saw my father approach him. He was in handcuffs with the police officers. I saw my father approach him, and I don't know what he said to him. He was pretty heated, and I saw it in his face. He was really angry. And again, that made me feel bad too, because I didn't want my father angry like that. I didn't want him to feel what I felt, right? I mean, I didn't want my sister to feel what I felt. I didn't want anybody to feel what I felt. So I thought it was best to just let it go, right? And that was the last time, you know, we talked about it until I went to the assembly. And I felt compelled to say something because it was there, it was in front of me. And it was something that I said, you know, I want to bring this story up. I'm going to talk about it. And I did. And then I didn't talk about it anymore.
Did you get any support? Did you get any help? Did you go to any psychologist?
We didn't do, and probably should have, right? Because I think it had affected me in lots of ways. Frankly, some ways I think it prepared me for this job, right? You know, there's a positive byproduct somehow, some weird way, right? But should I think God forbid this happened today, you know, you get your child counseling and you do those things, right?
Yeah.
It was a different time.
Did you share this with your children?
Yeah, I did. I shared this with my children when you and I got together. I never shared it with them. And meanwhile, that video of me speaking on the assembly floor when I was 27 years old in 1992 is there. But you have to search for it. So I told him, we talked about it, and I told him about it, and I asked him, I said, just watch the video, you know, watch the video.
How about your wife?
She knew about it.
Did you tell her before you got married?
She knows of me, and she never judged me for this, just only, you know, wanted to be there and be supportive.
I know it is so hard for men to actually talk about sexual abuse. There is a stigma that they feel, you know, that they're going to be identified as gay or, you know, because this is something that they worry about. What is your message to those men that are watching that have been sexually abused?
Be strong. Have the courage to go out there, tell the story. Because if you don't want to see happen to you, happen to someone else, then your story matters. Your story will save lives. Your story will prevent others from going through this.
And lastly, that
My main issue is the reemergence of this incident decades later in the midst of a fourth term controversy. Yeah, it's kind of like, the nuclear bomb, right? Pull it out when you really need it.
For him to say that it was basically disregarded because there was no physical evidence. I mean, if cops and district attorneys disregarded every complaint of sexual abuse that came in for a lack of physical evidence, you'd have pedophiles running around all over the place.
Right.
Like,
I mean, yeah, you can just run up to a woman and just grab one of her, her boobies or her butt, and then she calls the cops. You know, I didn't do that. What physical evidence is there going to be, really? Right?
I mean, did the cop actually say that to his father? Did the cop actually say in 1977 there's no DNA evidence? DNA identifications weren't happening in 1977. Not even close. Not until the earliest examples might have been in the mid 80s.
True.
And even then, it wasn't frequent, and it was very difficult to do. It wasn't until like the early 90s that the cold cases started getting closed left and right because of DNA identifications coming from physical evidence that had been preserved for decades.
Jones saying that going back to the thing, it's the reemergence of this incident decades later, right? But so I agree with that, and listen to also what he said there. He's just at the end. He says somehow this prepared me for this job, right? So that's another plus why you should vote for him as mayor, because he was prepared for this, and that in some weird way there is some positive byproduct of this.
Yeah. Do you have that? Let me see. I sent you a link. Did you get it?
No, I don't know if you sent me in a message, text message.
No,
I didn't check my email. But and then he told his kids about it, but he told them to just watch the video. Like, that's how you just want them to just watch the video. Maybe you should sit down with them, right? Or maybe you should just tell them yourself and not have them watch that video of him in the assembly talking about it. I mean, I don't know. That's not how I would do that if that happened to me with my kids.
He doesn't want them asking any questions that he can't answer.
Right. That's what I think. Unless he's telling them the truth and saying, "Hey, this is just politics," right? Anyone else have anything? Any comments? What are your thoughts out there, folks? Do you believe the story? Do you not believe the story? I know some people are having a little trouble with believing it. Again, I don't want to ever, say someone who's been sexually assaulted or a victim of a sexual assault, call them a lie or anything like that, but we're just talking about some of the inconsistency, the discrepancies in the story, things that just don't add up, right? And after all, this is politics, and politicians are known to really, dramatize things for the votes. That's right, Anthony. So much later for DNA. I hear what you said about many false allegations of abuse, but wouldn't a 12, 13-year-old be given the benefit of the doubt almost right off the bat? Again, no flyers in the hood about a suspected pedophile. This from a family of 16 kids. Yeah, no flyers, no warnings. But he did say that there was a police report, right? He mentions his dad learning of the details from the police report, which he never really mentions. He doesn't mention any details. He doesn't say exactly what happened to him. We can, kind of assume from, what he was saying that he was touched in some inappropriate ways. But, it's just a strange story. I mean, the second time around, he talked about going up these stairs, and every hour they got up a little more up the stairs, right? Up until the third hour where he finally convinced him that, he should let him go because he's going to be back tomorrow. And I promise you that, right? I'll be back. So
that's one of two major red flags. The first one being that, the police had no interest in going back at 1 o'clock the next day. That's a huge red flag. The second one is that,
you can do anything you need.
Go ahead.
Right. That's the clip that I sent you. But the pedophile spent 3 hours trying to convince Mike to come back the next day to do something that would have taken him 25 minutes at most.
Right.
And he could have done it 6 times over, before he let him go. It just doesn't make any sense. Doesn't add up.
He said he's one of the lucky ones. He's very lucky. Had he gone all the way up the stairs, he knows that it'd be over for him. He knew that he was going to kill him. And then he also mentioned something about the guy telling him at one point that he wanted to make videos, pornographic videos. He says that in one of the stories that he recounts. And I just thought that was strange, and it seemed like he really added a lot more details for the second interview, right? To really make it more, I guess, really pull on your heartstrings, I guess, and really.
Well,
make
he
you
had
say,
more
wow.
time because when you're one of many assemblymen trying to talk before a
Right.
big vote happens, you only get X amount of time. I think, but in a setting
Yeah.
like that, where it's the whole point of the show is to get those kind of stories out, you have a whole half hour, whatever it was, and I guess he was speaking a lot more slowly too.
And you would think that someone like Mike Spano, having gone through that, right, and and knowing, and he said himself, these individuals like that are impulsive. You don't ever know with them, right? Why would he associate with individuals that have histories of this? And there's a gentleman by James Sertivo who's been in city the council chambers recently. He's a consultant to Ginsburg, the developers doing work in Ludlow, which are clients of Nick Spano, his brother, the guy that one of the brothers that caught the pedophile that molested his little brother Mikey, right? But has no problem representing Ginsburg, a company that hires pedophiles and sex offenders as consultants.
Yeah, like I said, one of the comments that I made on one of your podcasts that I was watching, the Spanos would let John Wayne Gacy into a school with a camera if they thought that he would give them good coverage, if they thought that he would,
John Wayne Gacy
get some votes. You know John Wayne Gacy was?
Yeah. If you don't know, he I was gonna say he was a guy that dressed up as a clown, right, to lure his victims.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
So this is all right. So people who might be familiar with this guy, this is Michael Franzese. He's an ex-mob guy, real mob guy. As he likes to say, he walked away from the life a lot of years ago. But he talks in this clip with Chaz Palminteri, and you could skip forward to about the 1 minute mark. He talks about where he was going to write. He's going to write this book called Mafia Democracy, and he makes all sorts of parallels between how the government behaves and how the mafia behaves. And he starts to talk here a little bit about the writings of Niccolo Machiavelli, the philosopher on statecraft and such things. So when I see how the Spanos operate, Machiavellianism is the word that comes to mind, because as Michael Franzese sums it up here, the guy's whole philosophy was a means to an end. You go ahead and play it, and we'll talk about it after. You only got to go through a couple of minutes.
All right, and that's the guy. It was in that movie.
Yeah, that's
Bronx Tale, man.
Yeah,
with the Yonkers native. Forgot the what's his name?
I want to get into you, Machiavelli.
Yes.
I don't know anybody else other than my old friends on the street that were into Machiavelli.
Yeah.
And I saw your YouTube, and it was so funny. I was kind of laughing because he really gets it. Chaz really gets it. When we went to prison, it was almost required reading.
Absolutely.
You gotta read Machiavelli. My dad, he used to quote Machiavelli all the time.
Right.
And I'm writing a book. I'll tell you what happens. I write this business book a couple of years back, and did pretty well. I'm making an offer you can't refuse. I didn't create the title.
Right.
But my publisher says, I want you to write another book. I said, okay, what do you want me to write? He said, I want you to write a political book. Good timing. I said, okay. I said, let me think about it. So now, obviously, I still have some old feelings about the government,
Sure.
from the street. And the way I see the government, I'm not going to get political. I'm just telling you the thing in the book. I'm saying, the government is acting so much like the mob. They're so Machiavellian in the way they operate.
Yes.
And I see it in so many ways.
Of course, yes.
So I said, I'm going to write a book. It's going to be called A Mafia Democracy. And it's going to be how I see the government today. I start writing the book. This was 5 years ago. Obama was president. And I said, this isn't a gimmick. I'm going to do the research. I'm going to do it right. After I get into it, I write about 5 chapters, and I tell my wife, I said, these people are going to get upset with me. I said, because this is real. Not Republican, not Democratic, just the system. And I said, what do I need this for? Everything's good in my life. I don't need no headaches, right? I go back to my publisher. I said, I'm not writing the book. Here's the advance. I'm done, right?
Right.
Cut to just a couple of months ago. I feel a responsibility to write this book now.
Right.
Because you know what, Chaz? And this is true of a lot of my former associates. We may have been criminals, but we loved our country.
Yes.
We loved our country. A lot of guys went to war. They fought for this
Absolutely.
country in Vietnam and World War II. They fought for, we love our country. And we see things going wrong, we want to do something. So I want to make people aware So now I went back. Now I'm writing the book. It'll probably be released at the end of the summer.
Great.
Early, but there's so many things that Machiavelli warned us, or when he was consulting the prince and how
Yes.
to maintain control of his kingdom.
Yes.
So many things that I see in government today. I'll give you one example. Machiavelli always said this. He said, you can do anything you need to do to succeed. You can lie, you can steal,
That's
you
right.
can cheat,
Yes.
you can kill. Anything you do to maintain control of your kingdom. However, to the outside world, you must always appear to be honest, upright,
virtuous,
and have integrity, and
right.
virtuous.
Yes.
And I said, what am I looking at now? And these are only some of the things that
Yes.
I see. So Machiavelli, he was a brilliant guy.
Brilliant.
No question about it.
He was
Brilliant.
really the beginning of political science,
Yes.
if you think about it. Yes.
Brilliant. And some of the things he said, I agree with.
Yes.
And some of the things are just way off base.
Well, you just go, whoa.
Way off base. You go, whoa.
Well,
that's
he
right.
believed that men were basically innately immoral.
Yeah.
He believed that.
Well, you know what I believe, dude? I believe we're born with a sinful nature.
Yes.
I do believe that.
Yes.
We weren't born as, perfect people. We were born with a sinful nature.
Right.
And of course, there's so many distractions in our life that lead us
Right.
in that direction. And you really got to fight that off in your life many, many times.
Many
You gotta
times.
Fight it off to be a good
Especially
person.
when you're in power.
Yes.
The more powerful you get, which they always say, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Machiavelli used to say, when you got them by their balls, their hearts and minds will follow.
All right, let's stop it there.
And he's right. He's 100% right. Because you will believe it in your mind because you start saying, yeah, he's right.
So, real quick before we wrap it up,
So
Tell
when
me.
you have them by the balls, their hearts and minds will follow. Don't worry about it. Look, the Spanos are, as I was saying during the debate with Keith Olson on the last couple of podcasts, I was about to start saying it. I don't remember why I got cut off, but the Spanos are a racketeering organization. That's the way I see them. Okay. And so when Mike comes out and does things like this, he tells this story, or he goes down to the East Grassy Spring Pharmacy and he makes a video of him. Oh, he's getting the flu shot and he's grimacing, and then he's waving a lollipop. Come get a lollipop. He's trying to sell likability,
right.
trying to make people like him. Because it's always, don't look over here at all the pay to play schemes, the corrupt politics, the selling the job, the city jobs, and all the corrupt shit that we're doing. Look over here. Look over here. Me waving a lollipop, talking about me being a victim of child sexual abuse when I was 12 years old. It's don't keep your eye on the prize.
Right.
Just like me. Just vote for me because you like me because I'm a sweetheart. Okay, and that's what he's always trying to sell.
And that's what everyone says about Mike Spano, right? He's a likable guy, he's a good guy, and it almost like they want to exclude him from what's happening because they get that sense from him that he's a nice guy, he's a likable guy, and they don't want to say anything negative about him. And even when they know that he's kind of a part of it, they almost want to kind of minimize it or say like, he's such a nice guy, this, just that. It's really Big Nick. It's really Nick Spano, right?
I can't even tell you how many times.
It's really Nick Spano, right? It's, he doesn't even want to run. And he probably doesn't at this point, but, at the end of the day, blood in, blood out.
He's a grown man.
Yeah. Well, but when you're in like the mob or something like that, a lot of time it's to the death, right? You don't just get to walk out, man. Although Michael Francesi he did right with a lot of money, but his own dad almost killed him. You know about his story, right?
Yeah. I've
That's
seen
crazy.
Podcasts.
That's crazy.
Anyways.
Yeah, unbelievable. But yeah, so that's the thing, and that's what I've also said to people very recently in my podcast. We cannot this election, vote for individuals because we like them. It's not about what you like or that you like them or who you like, and it's not personal. Doesn't mean you dislike them if you don't vote for them, but we have to vote for the right person, right? And it's not because of just likability. Right? Like Donald Trump, a lot of people say, even who like him, I get it. The guy's an a-hole, whatever. He maybe, say, but, he did this, right? And that's, kind of what people would say about him, right? They didn't necessarily like him, but they like the way.
Right. Yeah. He was the polar opposite. Not many people did like him personally, but they liked the things that he was saying as far as policy, you know. So that's, and there was a lot of Democratic support for Donald Trump. People don't want to admit that. People don't
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
There really was.
A lot of Democrats
Yeah, I
like
mean,
Trump, and they've
yeah.
told me I'm still hearing it from Democrats, you know,
Yeah.
and minorities.
Yeah. Oh well, I mean, he got 8% of the black vote. I mean,
Yeah.
that's triple what a normal Republican does.
Most people don't know that he actually, in his second election, when he lost, he actually got more black votes and more votes from Hispanics than he did the first time around when he won.
Yeah.
No, it's a fact. So,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
I got
Right.
videos of Mexicans, man, with the Mexican flag and a big Donald Trump flag, right? And then it's like you look at that and you hear all these people say, oh, he's a racist. He wants to close down the borders. Well, look at this Mexican guy. He don't have any problem with them whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, politics, right? Politics is crazy.
Well,
But,
just keep the Machiavellian aspect of the Spano regime in mind. There's actually, you know, I'm not a big fan of Wikipedia, but I did read an article on Wikipedia, Machiavellianism in the workplace, and it's a fantastic little article in Wikipedia. It's like, you know, they might as well have titled that page as Spano Crime Family. If you read it, John Mueller, it's like his face is popping off the page.
just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in, and that's you know, The Godfather, right? Part 3, I believe. When
Silvio, she's talking. That's a Sopranos reference.
Oh, Sopranos? No, but they got that from The Godfather, though.
But the character in the Sopranos, Silvio, he's always doing
I got you.
Michael Corleone impressions.
I got you. Yeah, you know, and that's what people say. This is the Soprano crime family is like a mob. You know, there are a lot of connections to actual mob here. I put some articles up from, you know, by 2005 and, you know, 15, 20-year-old, but they're talking about the connection to certain crime families. I don't want to say no names, but real mob ties, you know.
I mean, well, I don't know about that. I mean, I use the analogies.
Well, yeah, well, you know, I put it up if you guys weren't interested in that. But the way they set it up, even this, you know, their administration, where they put certain individuals as department heads, right? Commissioners, like capos, right? And then they have their foot soldiers, right? And then you have your associates that want to be down, so they'll do whatever to try to get in.
Absolutely. I mean, the parallels between the way they do things and the way actual criminal organizations do things is
keep going. No, none of this makes sense at all. Just go directly at them. What do you mean, Danny? Well, he's trying to make the comparisons for a reason, right? So to kind of to help people understand a bit more of what, you know,
right,
the mindset of these individuals are. Yeah.
Right, and those are the kind of approaches that politicians take when they really think that the constituency that they're competing for is really stupid. You know.
Well, they're finding that out that that's not the case, and
yeah. Well, I hope so.
Yeah, and you know, that's another thing. I told my wife about this. You know, people have said, "Oh, your wife would be." I said, "No, my wife. She's nothing in politics. She speaks well. I don't know. You know, my wife wouldn't do well in politics, you know, not because, you know, I don't want to offend her, but she's just too nice, right? In politics, you have to be ruthless. And this is what I've told people time and time again. If these individuals that you see in politics, they're going to the top, you know, moving up, they are ruthless individuals with their own agendas. You know, they're self-serving, power hungry, greedy, right? Because the nice people that truly want to help other people, they will not survive in the political arena. They just won't.
But I think that's why Trump did so well, because for a change, he was ruthless, but he was honest and ruthless.
Right.
Okay.
And I like that. I prefer honest and ruthless, right?
Rather than being deceitful, like ruthlessly deceitful. He would just say things that was on his mind that he didn't care if you liked him or not. And he's like, oh well, if I don't win, I won't win. But you know, I'm not gonna bullshit people.
That's like he said to black people, black voters. He said, hey, what do you have to lose? You've been voting Democrat, you know, over and over and over. What do you have to lose this time? I mean, I guess he was in a way, he had a point. I mean, really, I guess what do you have to lose, right? You've been voting the same way. Nothing's changed. And, you know, and even here in Yonkers, we vote the same way. Nothing's changed. And I'm hoping that this year we vote different, right? And
I had hoped to have seen some of the footage from that incident down in Memphis. Before the podcast tonight, you keeping up on the news?
No, what happened? I've heard about the cops that were arrested. I'm not sure what happened there. There was a traffic stop and a guy dead.
It came out. They released the video like literally 45 minutes before we came on, and I saw bits and pieces of it. I didn't see anywhere near enough to be able to comment on it. Really, I know that a young black man died at the hands of 5 black police officers down in Memphis. And from what I was reading in the news, they were trying to prep everybody for the release of the video. They already have them arrested and charged with murder, all of them, murder and a slew of other charges. And it's almost as if they were trying to prep the public for the release of the video, saying how brutal it is. And I don't know. I haven't really seen much of it. I saw little drips and drabs of it, chasing the guy in the street. So maybe next week, during the week, I'll do my homework on the video, and maybe we'll have a conversation about it next week. We'll talk offline about it.
So I guess, yeah, those officers, that's what it was. They beat the guy during a traffic stop, and he's dead now. Wow.
He died, yeah. He died 3 days later.
3 days later? Wow.
Yeah, supposedly they tased him, sprayed him with mace, kicked him, punched him, beat him, chased him 4 different times.
Wow.
It didn't sound good from what I read, so I'm gonna have to take a look at the video. And
anyone see that? Anyone see that video? No, anyone comment on that? Wow. I mean, and you said they just released it. I'm gonna check that video. Wow.
They just released the video, yeah.
Wow. See if I got it here. See if we can play it. It's a commercial here. Nothing is without these commercials. Where's the sound? It says it's graphic, so please, bear with me. I'm gonna take us out of it. My apologies for the graphic video.
Get your ass, blow the fuck off. Get the fuck out the car. Get the fuck out the fucking car. Damn, I didn't do anything.
I read that there was a car chase first. I guess this just picks up where the car chase ends.
You don't do that, okay? Get on the fucking ground. Get on the ground. Okay, your ass. I'm on the ground. Turn around. Turn around. Please turn on the ground. I think I tase you. Get on the ground. One. Now. I tase him. All right. Okay. Break your shit. Okay, dude. Damn. Turn the fuck around. Put your fucking hands on your back. Bitch, put your hands behind your back. Okay, stop. I'm gonna knock your ass the fuck out. You guys are really doing a lot right now. Bro, lay down. I'm just trying to go home. Lay down. Man, if you don't lay down. I am on the ground. Put your hands on your stomach. I got you. Okay. Get the fuck back. Stop. I'm not doing it. Chase. Oh, shit.
That officer seems like he's out of shape.
Yeah, well, I can say just from the little bit that we've already seen that, the language being used is just wildly unnecessary. Certainly not going to de-escalate anything talking like that.
Right. I mean, the guy didn't seem aggressive.
Well, I was going to say, it's one thing if a guy's actively fighting with you, but he was just sort of passively resisting, and he was already on the ground. At that point, I'm not sure that screaming at him.
Oh, shoot. There's an ad there. Yeah, I mean, so you're saying that there was a car chase?
The guesswork out of email targeting by predicting which customer.
That's for me personally. I would get down close to him and I'd say, "Look, man, just lay down on your stomach so I could get these handcuffs on your wrist and make you walk."
Sell more with Intuit MailChimp.
Oh, here we go. Never mind. Stupid commercials. I'm tired of it. I can't even lower the volume on this video. I don't even know.
MailChimp takes the guesswork out of email by predicting which customers are more likely to come back and purchase again, helping businesses see it.
Yeah, I can't stop the audio for whatever reason. But so anyway, go ahead. So really quick, so they chased him because I haven't seen it. It's new to me.
It's from what I'm told. It's because my father was watching it right before I started the podcast. It's pretty long, so I'll have to do my homework on it, and maybe we can talk about it more next week. But I can tell you just from what we just watched, it's like screaming and cursing like that at a guy who's already laying on the ground. It never really accomplishes much. He's already amped up. You want to try to calm him down.
Right. And I see this a lot. I mean, like when they say, get on the ground, get on your stomach. They're yelling like, right. And maybe shouldn't they, like, I used to work in, in the schools, and we would do the crisis intervention, and we would train to, if there were, more than one of us there, dealing with the student, that only one would talk. Right, because it would just confuse the kid if you have everyone just throwing commands, and that's what it seems like sometimes. Police officers do a bunch and just throwing a bunch of commands. Just get on the ground, hey, what the fuck, right? And shouldn't there just be like one person to giving the directives and not to confuse the person? And also, he's underground. I guess I know they wanted him on his stomach, but I mean, what danger is he presenting there to officers if he's not exactly on his stomach, right?
Yeah, again, I'd have to watch the video again, to be able to answer a question like that, because I don't know where his hands were. Just watching it once quick like that. I mean, I don't really know. I don't know why they were so frantic. It didn't seem necessary to me, but I have no idea. This was apparently there was a street post, a lamp post that had a camera affixed to it.
This is difficult to watch here.
And it caught them beating on this
That is
guy.
Tyree Nichols.
Wow.
He's pinned down on the ground. You just saw an officer kick Tyree. There's at least
That looked like a shot to the head.
there's at least 3 officers surrounding him right now.
And
Again, he's on the ground.
forgive us again. This is the first time we have seen this video as well. You're watching it as we do. There's
another
Wow.
kick.
a third kick. It was Tyree's stepfather who said that one officer.
Just ridiculous. I don't get it.
That's the brief excerpt that we
Yes.
have so far.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, now the video just became unavailable, right? As we watching. Interesting.
Really?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's he's handcuffed. It appears this. And the guy's just kicking him. And
Yeah.
this
look, even in situations where I was in fights with people who were actively resisting arrest, fighting, punching, kicking, and you have to respond in kind, and you're fighting with them, eventually more cops are going to come and help you out. Once you put the handcuffs on them, it's over with. Everybody knows that.
right.
You know what I
That's,
mean?
sometimes it gets personal, I think, and I think sometimes maybe you get upset that they have to go through the chasing of the guy. Maybe not you, but other officers may get upset. Oh, you made us chase us. Now we're gonna F you up, and I don't get it.
Those days have been over for a long, long time, man.
Well,
That's how
maybe
guys
in Yonkers, but not other places. And I know Memphis, Tennessee is rough right there. It's been very bad. I'm not giving any justification and stuff like that, but maybe these officers also are kind of like out there. We're super pumped up. It's bad and out there in Memphis. It's bad in Memphis.
Yeah, I'm sure it
Yeah,
is, but
done.
there's no. It was the
I
same
mean-
thing with the George Floyd. It's like the guy is in handcuffs. What are you doing? He's in handcuffs already.
Right.
Get him up, and put him in the back of the car. I don't know. about that, Danny.
I
work
watched
with
I
those
watched the
guys.
documentary, and just so folks, those who want to just say it's white cops, beating on blacks and stuff like that. All cops do it. I've seen videos of black cops beating on black, as we see here. I've seen videos of white cops beating on white people. I saw a white cop roundhouse a white woman who was pregnant while she sat on the curb handcuffed, hands behind her back. She's sitting on the curb, pregnant woman, and he does a roundhouse and kicked her in the face because of some smart remarks she made to him. Crazy, right? I've seen white officers throw a white girl into the wall when they throw her into the cell. Boom, she hits the wall and just went on. So, it's not about color. It's just about the individual people they're just bad people. They
Cops
shouldn't
who
be.
do things like that should be fired and sent to prison.
Yeah.
I mean,
So, we have to
Both
come
ways about
together regardless of what color, and just stand up to, all, this kind of stuff, and anything that's a violation of our rights or whatever, we have to come together, right? It can't be divided by color. I'm afraid that something like this is going to lead to maybe some more riots and stuff like that and protests, I don't know. Maybe we don't want to see
I'm sure it is.
George Floyd stuff.
They're doing everything they possibly can to mitigate that. They waited until after they arrested them to release the video, which I think is probably a good move.
Right.
Because had they released it,
Right. No, go ahead. I'm with you.
yeah, had they released it before they arrested these guys, then I think the cities really would be burning.
You never know anything about them. Why don't you come to the neighborhood to hear the story? Stop that blue wall thinking. That Anthony is
I-
a cop, and to Anthony, he's a police officer. He's gonna think, but I don't know what I mean by blue wall thinking. He was supporting the guy that got beat
listen,
up.
Danny. I learned over the last couple of years. I've learned the hard way that the thin blue line is a lot of bullshit. It's really just a coffee mug, it's a bumper sticker, it's a T-shirt. So don't accuse me of thinking like that. I mean, I love and support the police, and I'll always be one at heart. But the thin blue stuff, the blue wall.
That's like the stop snitching or the no snitching thing. That's like created by guys so they don't get in trouble. I do believe that if you are engaging in criminal activity, right? If you get caught, and you snitch, then that's kind of a sucker stuff because you participate.
Absolutely.
You want to be a part of it, and then you want to snitch. But if you're not a participant or whatever, and listen, we got to stop crime, man. We don't want crime in our neighborhoods.
Well, this is politics, man. This is nobody's snitching on anybody here. We're at war, so it's what I'm saying is I worked with those guys directly a lot of times. I never saw anything like that.
All right.
So,
and so
otherwise, well, I don't know what you want me to say. I mean, I'm not buying it.
Yeah, so he says you're not part of the circle, so you wouldn't know anything. Yeah, and I'm sure, Danny, that they probably knew who to do things, do things around and not to do things around. I'm sure when Anthony DiMaggio was around, they didn't, steal the money. They actually turned it in. But when he wasn't around, they took it home. Especially on Christmas, right? Christmas, the drug dealers would get robbed a lot on the streets, right, Danny? Danny, right? Ain't that? Am I lying, Danny? Right? They used to come around Christmas time and really hit them up for the money. Right, and then they let them go. They take the money though.
Well, that's what you heard.
And they would say that too. It's Christmas time. They would say that. That's what this is true story, folks. This is a real true story. Listen, it's part of the game. They can't be mad either, right? If you out there, and if I was a drug dealer and I got my money taken and then go to jail, I'd be happy with that. I'm not a drug. I didn't say you were a drug dealer, Danny. I'm not a drug dealer either. But in the streets, right? People, and then back in the days in the 90s when I used to be out there, I know about that. I know people, I have family members that would, at one point, not anymore, but at one point, when they were younger, they used to come take the money.
So let's maybe, obviously I want to move ahead with my story a little bit, but maybe we could spend
take the crack from the north and bring it to the south. They would do that too. I know they would put crack on people, So anyway, but Anthony DiMaggio, thank you for joining me. Check out the video. Maybe we'll talk about that next week and kind of break that down a little bit. I'm sure there's going to be a lot happening in the next coming days in regards to that story.
Oh, and as far as this Mike Spano story from tonight, if he going forward, if he wants to provide some of those details that are woefully lacking in his narrative, like maybe show that police report that he referenced, maybe give the name of his creep that he said pulled him into the woods. Give the guy's name. What do you care about him? What are you trying to protect his reputation?
Yes, the police report.
Right.
The police report.
Yeah, the
I would
police
like to
report,
see that.
right.
He said there was a police report. His dad read the details from the police report. So, maybe there was no computers back then. Maybe
because there's a lot of people who are calling BS on this story, and it's not because I'm twisting their arm to not believe it. I mean, a lot of people just don't believe it. So give us the cop's name. You talk to some cops. Let us verify that. I can verify that easily. I know a lot of old timers. You love that.
I'm Freddie Vasquez, Basement Politics Unfiltered. That's Anthony DiMaggio, former Yonkers police lieutenant. 15 years on the job. Until, but we're going to get it back, right?
Yeah.
Anthony DiMaggio is going to be the police commissioner soon.
Going forward, I'll show you guys the agreements. That's going to be interesting when we start getting into some of that stuff. That's on the horizon.
We should FOIA request it. We'll see if we can get it.
The report. Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Anyway, folks, I'm Freddie Vasquez. Anthony, thank you. Have a beautiful night and good weekend. Enjoy, man. Take care.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, what's going on here? Folks, thank you for joining me. I'm Freddie Vasquez. He said the detective's name was Kane, I believe. Kane. There's the first name. Cole. Dean won't let that go. Anyway, folks, I'm Freddie Vasquez. Thank you for watching. That was Anthony DiMaggio, former Yonkers police lieutenant who was fired in a case of retribution when he had an issue with another detective sergeant, someone who was actually underneath him, a subordinate. but he was a made guy in this Spano crime family, as Anthony DiMaggio calls it. And you don't mess with a made guy in the Spano crime family, or you will lose your job. And that is why a lot of people have never or have not been vocal about what's happening in Yonkers. But that's slowly changing. The cracks are starting to show. The plans are starting to unravel. People are speaking out more and more. Thank you for that. I'm Freddie Vasquez, Basement Politics Unfiltered. Peace out. He will. Danny, you're persistent, Danny. That's good. It's always good to be persistent. Folks, I'm hearing that Alexandra Petescu is not getting their permit. She has to wait for her turn in line. So who will be appointed court judge to replace Elena Goldberg Velasquez? Will it be our city council president, Keisha Collins Bellamy? She did say it was her dream. And don't forget, Anthony Moranti will be announcing, or did he already announce? Is it tomorrow? When is he announce? Did he announce? He's going to be making a formal announcement. And also, there will be another meeting this coming Tuesday in regard to the new district maps. So make sure you folks attend. I will put up the details soon. And this is Basement Politics. I'm Freddie Vasquez. Again, if you have any information or questions, comments, or concerns, email me at politicwithfred@gmail.com. That's politicwithfred@gmail.com. And I'm also working on a couple stories to bring you guys, doing a little investigation. I got my field team at work currently right now, staking out certain individuals. We not playing. You should have just let me open up my daycare centers. I would have been so busy with number 2 and 3 probably by now that I would have never done Basement Politics. But here we are.
Freddie wins. Fatality.
I was raised in housing. I don't think you were. I went to Yonkers public schools. I don't think you did. We can go on all night with this, honey.
You're watching Basement Politics. My dad, Freddie Vasquez. You're watching Basement Politics with my dad, Freddie Vasquez.
In another one, Mr. Rumo lied to me. And I don't vote for the person that lied to me. Thank you very much.
I want to end this quick because I'm greedy and I want some of the butter chicken. So thank you. I want to end this quick because I'm greedy and I want some of the butter chicken. So thank you.
Freddie wins. Fatality.
I know who the fuck you think you are. You want to play this game? I know who the fuck you think you are. You want to play this game? You're gonna lose it. I'll tell you right now. No.
Freddie wins. Fatality.
But I am the bad guy.
I know you have a lot of women that work in your office. And I was also told that you favor some over others. I'm hoping that this is not true, Sammy. Please elaborate on that. I'm hoping that this is not true, Sammy.
But I am the bad guy.
But I'm a councilwoman, so the capacity that I know you in, they may know you in a different capacity. But I'm a councilwoman, so the capacity that I know you in, they may know you in a different capacity.
Freddie wins.
Let's get it poppin'.
Thank you for watching Basement Politics with my husband, Freddie Vasquez.
Freddie wins. Fatality.
No!
Thank you, Yonkers. I'm Freddie Vasquez. This is Basement Politics Unfiltered, where the truth lives and corruption dies. Soon, you will be hearing some surprises. And I can't wait. This isn't over until it's over.
Freddie wins. Fatality.
I was raised in housing. I don't think you were.